been talking about President Trump's push to reopen schools across the country in the fall and his threat to cut off federal funding for schools that don't comply. Well, our next guest was ahead of the news. Last month, he, along with Wisconsin Representative Tom Tiffany, introduced a bill that would withhold funding from schools that do not open for in-person learning in the fall. In explaining the bill, he said this: reopening our schools is the linchpin to the reopening our economy. Many parents rely on their kids going to school so they can go to work. To get our society up and running again, we need our children back in school. Well, joining us now is Indiana Congressman and member of the House Education and Labor Committee, Jim Banks. Congressman, welcome back.
Hey, great to be with you.
Great to be with you. Well, President Trump has been pretty strong on this. The CDC came out with guidelines on how to open, but President Trump wasn't very happy with them in a tweet, of course. This is what he said at CDC.gov. On their very tough and expensive guidelines for reopening schools, while they want them open, they are asking schools to do very impractical things. I will be meeting with them. Well, he has mentioned the meeting with them. CDC said we're not going to revise these plans at all. But I got to ask you, Congressman, when you think about our kids, are they worth the additional money, the additional effort to make sure that these things are in place? Shouldn't we want that?
There's no question about it. We are about to leave an entire generation of kids behind if we don't get them back in the classroom to start the next school year in the fall. We already know that the virtual learning environment that kids were caught up in at the end of the last school year actually cost them a good section of their educational time. We know that they backslide in the summer. We're at the point where it's going to be almost an entire school year behind in education when they start in the fall. We can't afford to hold them out of school any longer. And that's why I and so many others, the president, has shown tremendous leadership here in calling for schools to reopen, get kids back into the classroom 5 days a week, give families an option if you have to provide virtual learning from some schools where parents don't want to send their kids back to the classroom. But overall, the vast majority of parents are saying that they will send kids back to the classroom 5 days a week if they have that option. Anything short of that is unacceptable, in my opinion.
Congressman, I want to make a hard left or right, however you want to say it, turn to China. You are on that China task force, and I want to ask you basically for an update. I know you were on this program a little while back, and what has that progress been like? Because, as a matter of fact, you've done quite a bit on that issue. You actually have a predatory acquisition during COVID-19 Act. That is what it is called. It prevents companies with ties to China from owning more than 51% of shares in certain entities. And we've put it up on the screen there. So where are we on this China task force? What can you report to the American people today in terms of the work being done?
Well, it's a really good segue because just in recent days, China has announced, by the way, that they're sending their kids back to school. That means that their kids are going to be ahead of our kids when it comes to important educational categories like STEM and get an education while our kids aren't getting an education stuck at home. And overall, this gets into the bigger subject. The greatest existential threat that America faces today is China, both economically and militarily. And that's why Kevin McCarthy, our Republican leader in the House, decided to put this China task force together. As you know, it was supposed to be a bipartisan effort. And just up to the point that it was released, Speaker Pelosi and House Democrat leadership decided not to participate with it, which is mind-boggling to me, because this is the biggest threat we face as a country. China for years has stolen our jobs and wrecked our economy. They've given us this coronavirus to deal with. And at this point, they're finding ways to profit from a pandemic that was of their own making. And that's why I introduced the predatory acquisitions bill, because there are examples of China trying to purchase American assets while America's economy is on its knees. We know they're sending their kids back to school to get ahead of us educationally. We can't allow them to happen. And that's what the China Task Force is trying to dig deeply into, how we combat that.
Congressman, it's always good to have you. Thanks so much for your insight and all you're doing.
Great to be with you.
All right, well, coming up, Philadelphia Eagles receiver Deshaun Jackson says he's sorry for his anti-Semitic post on Instagram, but is an apology enough, or should he be punished by the league? We'll ask our company next.